The 2020 F1 season was one of the strangest in recent memory. There was COVID, which cancelled the opening race on the Thursday before it happened, then there was the driver moves that happened before the season started, and then of course there were the ridiculous results. But today, we're taking this weird, shortened season and making it even better thanks to the reverse point system. 10th place now gets 25 points, with first getting 1, which led to a very close battle at the front of the grid. Because of COVID, the season opener would be set in Austria and in July. In this one, Ferrari went from having the fastest car in a straight line in 2019 to one of the slowest in 2020, with Leclerc somehow managing 2nd place while his teammate Vettel won the format by finishing in 10th place. This 10th was helped by him spinning while trying to overtake Sainz, overtaking Raikkonen as he lost a wheel, Kvyat retiring from 9th place, and Albon getting spun by Hamilton at turn 4, sealing the deal and securing the 10th place. This was a very weird race, as it ended with Giovinazzi in 9th and Esteban Ocon on his return to F1 in 8th. Reliability was for some reason a massive issue, and so we only had 11 finishes at the end, with Latifi just missing out on his first points in F1 on debut. But the standings are the same as the final position, so we can move on to the next race, which is also in Austria. It's the same race, just 7 days later. No biggie though, because we got a completely different result for the second race. Vettel retired on lap 1 after a crash with his teammate, and Ocon and Giovinazzi also finished outside of the points. Kvyat finished a kind of boring race on the top step in 10th, with Sainz in 9th and Ricciardo in 8th. This means that McLaren take the lead in the constructors, as Sainz edges past Vettel and Kvyat with 2 finishes and crucially 2 finishes in the points. And that fastest lap helps him out as well. Hungary cooked up a bit of a snooze fest, but a notable decision was taken on the first lap for our 10th place finisher. Magnussen pitted on the formation lap for slicks and ended up making it work. He actually finished in 9th on the road, but due to a penalty for communicating on the formation lap, he finished in 10th place. This meant it was Kevin Magnussen in 10th, with Sainz getting bumped up to 9th and Ricciardo finishing 8th again. Sainz extended his lead out in front of the standings as McLaren and Racing Point get very close in the constructors. Haas moved from last up to 6th and Mercedes dropped to 9th. In the first of the Silverstone races, yep, that's right, there were 2 races at Silverstone in 2 weeks, Perez got COVID and was replaced by Nico Hülkenberg. He couldn't start the race. This one was a slow burner. On lap 50, Bottas' tyre exploded, which dropped him out of the points to 11th. Our championship leader, Carlos Sainz's tyre, did the same on lap 52, which dropped him down to 13th. And then out of the embers came Vettel, who just about hung on to 10th place to retake the lead in the championship. Elsewhere, Hamilton won the race on 3 wheels, Stroll finished 9th, and Albon went from 12th to 8th. Vettel is now 16 points clear of Sainz, with Racing Point narrowly leading the constructors thanks to those 18 points from Stroll, who jumps from 8th to 4th in the standings. 4 teams are now in the 60s in terms of points, so let's see how they do in the second British Grand Prix. At the start, Vettel had a spin after starting in 11th place and ended up finishing in 12th. Sainz started in 12th and ended in 13th place, meaning the top 2 didn't score any points. So who would take this golden opportunity? Well, it was only 16th place on the starting grid Daniel Kvyat, as he finished in 10th, 1 second ahead of his teammate Pierre Gasly. Norris would finish 9th with Ocon 8th, which definitely spices up the standings as Renault, AlphaTauri and McLaren score big again. Vettel keeps first in the standings, but with neither him or Sainz scoring points, Kvyat jumps to 2nd and Stroll moves ahead of Carlos. Racing Point stay in 1st as McLaren are 8 points behind, thanks to Hülkenberg scoring points in 7th, and the top 5 are separated by 18 points. In Spain, not much happened, I'm gonna be real. Vettel managed a 7th place as Sainz was 6th, but in 10th was Lando Norris, who gets a 9th 1 week and then 10th the next, entering contention. He's only 8 points off Vettel and 10 ahead of his teammate. Stroll and Albon are tied on 52 points and Kvyat is the last of the 50 plus scorers. This obviously means McLaren become our leaders in the constructors and take a commanding 23-point lead on Racing Point. On the podium with Norris was Gasly as well as Albon for the 2nd week running. This means Red Bull are slightly competitive, even though Max is coming 2nd every race and scoring 2 points. Next was Belgium, and this was a spicy one. On the way to the grid, Sainz DNF'd, and this, combined with Vettel not scoring points, meant 2 contenders were out of the question. So who would get 10th place? Well, it was Sergio Perez, 5 tenths behind Stroll, as Racing Point essentially got a 1-2. But with Norris scoring 12 points in 7th, he overtakes Vettel with 76 points and leads the championship. Stroll also goes into 3rd place, 6 points behind Lando, with Perez joining the hunt. Albon gets 6th place, meaning he is also kind of in with a chance, and Gasly finished 8th, meaning AlphaTauri are 3rd in the constructors. The Racing Point 1-2 has massive ramifications for the order, winner, as with McLaren only scoring with one car, the pink car retakes the lead of the constructors. Next up was Italy, and what a race this was in real life. But with Gasly, Sainz and Stroll coming first, second and third, they barely got any points. This especially hurt Stroll, who only scored 4 points. Vettel had a brake failure and DNF'd early on, ruling him out for another weekend, and with Ocon and Kvyat coming in 8th and 9th, the Russian re-enters the picture. But I bet you have no idea who finished 10th in this race, because who remembers that? Well, it was Sergio Perez, as he claimed back-to-back 10ths after starting 4th on the grid. It's another big swing in the title, as Perez leads from Norris, Stroll, Vettel and then Kvyat. Racing Point score very good points thanks to Sergio, as they go from 8 points ahead of McLaren to 29. Sainz, after being considered a contender early on in the year, is now 9th place in the standings, but that's kind of misleading considering the gap from 5th to 9th is only 12 points and the top 10 all have 50 points or more. The teams have basically been split in two, with Haas, Williams, Alfa Romeo and Mercedes just chilling, and Verstappen just chilling in the bottom 10 while his teammate fights for the title. Another Italian race was to follow, and it was the Tuscan Grand Prix held at Mugello. On lap 1, Verstappen and Gasly were both wiped out in a multi-car crash, and Sainz and Vettel also got caught up in it. On the safety car restart, Bottas left it way too long and caused a big accident at the back, as another 4 cars were wiped out, including Sainz, who DNF'd once again and was most likely out of the running. By the end of that red flag, there were only 13 cars on the track, and with Stroll having a massive crash near the end of the race, another contender was out. Russell had been running in 10th for most of the race, but after the red flag caused by the Stroll crash, he had the worst start of all time and dropped out of the top 10. This meant it finished with Vettel 10th once again, Kimi Raikkonen entering the championship with 9th after a penalty, and Leclerc inheriting 8th place. It was a strong 1-3 for Ferrari and a big win for Vettel, but with Perez scoring 8 points, he managed to stay ahead by just 1 point to Sebastian. Norris was only 5 points back, as a 3-way title fight is now on the cards. Perez versus Vettel versus Norris. Racing Point kept a big gap to McLaren, and Ferrari scored 40 points as they go from the 84 points to 124. Sochi was next. I bet you forgot about this race, because I definitely did. The only thing I remember was Hamilton doing a practice start on the pit exit and getting a penalty for it. But that's at the front of the grid, which no one cares about. The real fight is at the back, and this was a big one, as Stroll, Norris and Vettel all didn't finish in the points. All this while Perez does. It wasn't many, just 6, but at least he was getting points on the board. So with Albon in 10th, Gasly in 9th and Kvyat in 8th, Albon now re-enters the title hunt, Kvyat moves up into 3rd, and now we have 5 drivers within 13 points at first. The constructors also saw a shake-up, as AlphaTauri closed in on Racing Point and McLaren are not far behind. Race 11 was the Eiffel Grand Prix, aka the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit. Once again, a Racing Point driver got COVID, but this time it was Stroll, as he was basically out of the running for the title. This meant Hülkenberg would return. On lap 17, Albon fought with Kvyat before not leaving him space and taking off his front wing. A potential 10th place for Kvyat was now out of the picture, and that could be huge. Bottas, Albon and Norris all DNF'd, meaning we got a very weird top 10. Vettel finished in 11th, just 8 tenths behind 10th place Giovinazzi, who himself was a second behind Romain Grosjean in 9th. 7 seconds up the road was Hülkenberg, who got on the podium for Racing Point after starting 20th on the grid in an incredible drive. With Perez scoring 6 points, this was a great weekend for the team, as McLaren could only manage 8 with Carlos Sainz. This therefore meant Perez extended his lead out in front, and Gasly was slowly creeping into this title fight. Perez was the only driver to score in the top 5, and as we left Germany, Racing Point lead by 30 points to AlphaTauri. Now it was time for the first Portuguese Grand Prix since 1996, and it was a chaotic start. But after a while, it eased out into a kind of dull race. Stroll tried an optimistic move into turn 1, which damaged both his and Norris's car and sent them to the back. Maybe sabotage. Norris would finish 13th, as Albon was 12th and Kvyat was 19th. And so I present to you the podium in Portugal. It was Sebastian Vettel in 10th, followed by the Renault cars of Ricciardo and Ocon. Perez scored good points in 7th after being hit by Verstappen on lap 1, and Gasly also scored, which meant the standings would be changing. And indeed they were, as Perez and Vettel are tied on 122 points. 3rd was still Kvyat with 95 points, but now it was Gasly in 4th, as Norris didn't score again. 7 drivers have 90 or more points, and with that result, Renault enter contention again, as the top 5 in the constructors is incredibly close. We were back in Italy for the first race at Imola in 14 years, and it really delivered for our championship. A puncture caused Verstappen to crash and led to a safety car late on. During the safety car, Russell got hit by Ericsson, and then on the restart, Albon spun and basically wrote off any fight he had in the championship. And so it ended as follows: Kimi Raikkonen 10th, Giovinazzi 9th, and Norris 8th, and Alfa Romeo 1-2 in Italy. I cannot believe my eyes. And massive points for Norris, as Vettel doesn't score. However, Perez does once again get a decent haul of points, as he goes clear of Vettel by 10 points. Norris re-enters enters the top 3 and Kvyat is still holding on as he breaks the 100 point mark. With Carlos getting 7th, McLaren close up to Racing Point and Alfa overtake Mercedes to go 7th. It was another return to a classic track as Istanbul cooked up a banger. At the race start, Stroll on pole led comfortably. The Red Bulls got away badly and it was a Racing Point 1-2. Good in real life, but this is not good for their championship fight. But it's all good because their awful strategy fucked Stroll over and he finished 9th. Kvyat did not score points, but Perez, Vettel and Norris all did. It finished with Ricciardo in 10th, Stroll in 9th and Norris in 8th, and with Vettel and Perez finishing on the podium in 3rd and 2nd, Norris closes up to the top spot and is now only 11 points off Sergio, with McLaren getting within 18 points of Racing Point. The top 10 now all had 90 plus points and 10th was 44 points off of 1st. And as they say, anything can happen. And anything did happen in Bahrain for round 15. To put it blunt, Romain Grosjean almost died, Kvyat flipped Stroll, and Perez retired on lap 54 from 3rd place, which ended the race behind the safety car. With Perez not scoring and also Vettel not scoring, Norris did, and seemingly out of nowhere, Ricciardo was now in the hunt. He finished in 7th as the top scorers looked like this: Leclerc 10th, Ocon 9th, and Bottas 8th. Norris got 4th, which meant he was now 5 points off Perez, with Ricciardo only a further 4 points behind. Ocon was also closing in, and the top 9 all had over 100 points. Now we move to Sakir, which is basically Bahrain Part 2. Hamilton caught COVID for this race, and so he was replaced by Russell at Mercedes, leading to a penultimate race that shook up the standings. On lap 1, Perez was hit by Leclerc and got sent to the back. Verstappen and Leclerc retired, but Checo kept going. Once everyone had calmed down, Russell controlled the race out in front. On lap 55, Latifi retired, which led to a VSC, and Perez was now up to 5th. He then made a beautiful overtake on his teammate and looked set for a deserved P3. Then the race was flipped on its head on lap 63, as Jack Aitken spun at the final corner, which led to a safety car. Mercedes then double sacked their cars and completely messed up the pit stops. They put Bottas's tyres on Russell's car, which obviously messed up Valtteri's tyres, and he had to carry on with old slow tyres. Russell then came around the next lap to pit again, which dropped him down to 5th, meaning Racing Point were now 1-3. Russell then sized up Bottas and had the pace to win before Mercedes said he had a puncture, and they pitted him once again. This meant it would end 1-3 for Racing Point, with Perez winning his first race after 190 races. After Racing Point signed Vettel for 2021, and with his sacking coming halfway through the year, it was looking certain that this would be Perez's last year in the sport, unless a top team was willing to take him on. While this win was obviously great for Perez, when he got all teary-eyed on the podium, was he crying tears of joy or tears of sadness? By winning in real life, he had inadvertently bottled the championship because a certain Brit was in 10th place. That's right, Norris got max points as Perez got 1. Perez had gone from 4 points ahead of 2nd to 19 points behind 1st, as Norris was up to 154 and Ricciardo finished 5th, meaning he got 8 points. It was a nightmare for both Racing Point and Perez as they lost the constructors lead and were now in the clutches of Renault. Norris now had a 16-point lead on 2nd place Ricciardo going into Abu Dhabi, so there would need to be a miracle for Perez to win. So Abu Dhabi arrives. Perez is on the brink of a Red Bull drive after an incredible season, and Russell is now on the board after scoring points in Sakir. Only 3 drivers were in contention now, and thanks to that massive points haul by Lando, he had to really badly bottle it in order to lose this one. If Ricciardo wanted to win, he would have to outscore Lando by 17 points, and if Perez wanted to win, he would have to outscore Norris by 20 points. In qualifying, our title contenders looked as such. Norris was 4th, Ricciardo was 12th, and Perez was 15th after he was forced to take an engine penalty. On race day, Perez retired on the 8th lap, ending what had been a great title fight for 75% of the year. Other than that, it was a fucking boring one, as Verstappen led every lap, won by 16 seconds, and Norris finished in 5th with Ricciardo 7th. This meant Norris was our world champion in the mid-championship. He won by 11 points to Ricciardo, who put up a decent fight and somehow finished in 2nd after being nowhere for most of the season. But while the Drivers' Championship was kind of a given, the Constructors was very close. The lower positions for this race changed everything, as Stroll was 10th, Ocon was 9th, and Gasly was 8th. This meant Racing Point won the Constructors by 3 points, with them finishing on 283, McLaren on 280, and Renault on 279. But, and there is a massive but, It was all for nothing, as Racing Point were actually Tracing Point and had illegally copied parts off Mercedes' car, and so were fined and also deducted 15 constructors' points. So in the end, McLaren won both championships, but just 1 point ahead of Renault at the checkered flag. This was a crazy season which saw 10 different winners, an amazing drivers fight until Sakir, and an amazing constructors battle which went right down to the wire. After this crazy fight in 2020, 2021 was set to be the final year until new regulations came in for 2022. And with this format, it was another banging season, and it's on screen right now for you to see. Thank you very much for watching.